Hey Windowers, and welcome to another episode of Windows on Windows, part of the question and answer series. Welcome to episode 3, and without further ado, here's another set of great questions asked by subscribers and viewers since episode 2. First question comes from Lenny Colton, who asks, how do you animate the titles at the beginning of your videos? So the Windows on Windows branding is actually designed and animated by YouTube user SpriteClad, and I'll put a link to his channel in the description below. It's really fantastic and I'm really thankful that you have to do it for me, but really the most I have to do is simply add it to my timeline when editing the video in Premiere Elements, and then I apply video merge to create the whole clicking on the logo and opening into the video effect thing, which I explained really badly, but I'm sure you know what I mean. So yeah, I literally cannot take any of the credit for that. Only the name is my creation. The logo and the animations are all SpriteClad's, so thank you to him again. Okay, next question comes from Windows Guy, who asks, if Microsoft kept naming Windows as numerals such as Windows 10, 11, 12 and so on, but when they reach Windows 95 again, what do you think might happen? Now it seems that actually this will never happen, as Microsoft has already announced that Windows 10 will apparently be the last version of Windows, and rather than any new versions of Windows in the future, any and all new features will simply be added to Windows 10 over time. So at the moment what happens is generally new features are introduced in what are called canary builds inside Microsoft, and then these canary builds are tested by a small group of developers, and if everything goes okay, those builds are then sort of divvied along to a wider branch of developers. I think Microsoft now tend to call these rings just to be extra cool and give them a special name. So from the canary builds they go into the next ring out, and that's still inside Microsoft, but obviously more developers this time. If everything checks out, they then have a third ring, I believe, still inside Microsoft, and when a feature reaches the third ring and is tested and works satisfactorily, it then goes to the Windows Insider program into the fast ring, which is the first ring where a build is available to people outside of Microsoft. And from the fast ring, if everything checks out, and that's combined with user feedback, it then goes to the slow ring, and again with user feedback, and if everything checks out, it then goes to the Windows 10 public release builds. So that's generally how features tend to be added. In fact, on similar lines, I predict that at some point in the not too distant future, I think Windows 10 will actually lose the 10 part of the name, and I think it'll just become Windows, because I mean, how many versions of Windows 10 could you possibly have before it just gets really confusing? We've had the anniversary update, the creators update, full creators update, like how many names could you possibly come up with? So I think they'll just call it Windows, and for every update don't bother giving it a name, just call it like whatever, like they do already. Like 1709 is what, that's the full creators update. I think just call it version 1709, Windows 10 version 1709, that's fine. It doesn't need a name. That just makes it more confusing, I think. Apologies, by the way, guys, because I actually have a really sore throat at the moment, so if I sound like a completely different person, then that is why, so apologies, but I really did want to do this video for you. So next question comes from It's Dragon GG, who asks, what's your video editor and when will you do Windows 98? So the video editor I use at the moment, and I have used for quite a long time, is Adobe Premiere Elements. At the moment I use version 18. Really early on in the videos I did used to use Windows Movie Maker, believe it or not, and I know that is slightly embarrassing, but like I was sort of saying on the Discord a few days ago, back in 2012 when I did the first XP videos, I never intended to have 5,000 subscribers. It was just me passing a little bit of time in the like school holidays. Literally, that's what I was doing. But yeah, so I use Adobe Premiere Elements 18, and the Windows 98 series will be the next series after Vista is finished. So expect the first video looking at the development of 98 in the next couple of months, basically. Vista's almost finished, and as voted for on the forum, the vast majority of people voted out of all available options for Windows 98 to be the next OS that I look at, and I'm extremely happy and excited about that, because I'm sure, like everyone else, I love Windows 98. It's so nostalgic. It was the first version of Windows that I used, and I cannot wait to do that series. I really can't. So next question comes from the Nerdy Hound, who asks, do you think about Windows XP and why? Which I'm assuming you meant, what do I think about Windows XP and why? So Windows XP, obviously, if you've seen the development of XP series, really great OS. Microsoft put so much effort into getting XP absolutely spot on when it came out, and they did. They got it down to a T, and it really paid off for them, and I'm so happy for them. However, two downsides to XP being so well developed. Firstly, it was still being used and still supported 12.5 years later, which is ridiculous, no matter what your opinion of XP is. I mean, XP, yes, it's a brilliant operating system, but really, 12.5 years this was supported for. And you know, by April 2014, when eventually it was out of support, it was hardly functional. You know, really, unless you were really set in your ways and going out your ways to find software that would support XP, and you know, it was just unnecessary. There were so many newer options, you know, so it really went on too long. And the other downside is Vista and development of Vista, or codename Longhorn. And I think part of the problem with Vista, especially in the beginning, was that Microsoft was so happy with how well XP had done that I think that they just felt like they could do no wrong. And in Vista, they were just like, yeah, we'll just shove all this stuff in. We'll put all these cool features in, and it'll be amazing. Everyone will love us. It'll be even better than XP, without really thinking and really being logical and analytical about it. And I think that is another downfall of the success of XP. But again, lots of positives. Really, really well developed. Brought loads of new features to the table for the first time. Out of the box wallpaper, integrated firewall, welcome screen, you know, loads of stuff, and a really, really good and well earned step up from Windows 9X. So next question comes from Marshall Sava, who asks, do you think Windows Neptune should have been released so Windows 2000 had a home version of itself? Now, a difficult question in terms of Neptune, because we don't know at what point Neptune actually was cancelled altogether. We don't know at what point it got to. Obviously, it was never finished. We have one leaked build 5111. But that was really, really rough around the edges, nowhere near a finished product, so it's hard to say in terms of Neptune itself. However, Windows 2000 really, I think, should have had a home version of itself. I think the merger between NT and consumer versions of Windows should have happened before 2001. There was no need, for example, for Windows Me to be developed and come out. That was just ridiculous. You know, 98 was fine. XP, if you think about it, right, 98... You had 98 that came out obviously in 1998, 98 second edition came out in 1999, XP was only out 2 years later, so actually there was still a really, really small gap between those two releases, but if that wasn't enough, then in the middle of that, Microsoft decided to push out Windows Millennium Edition for an unknown reason that didn't have real mode DOS support. And, you know, it just makes you want to ask why. Why would you invest developers and development time and skills into another version of 9X with less than, or roughly, a year to go before you're planning to merge all the lines together anyway? And it just seems a bit bizarre. So I think by the time 2000 was out, I mean, Windows 2000 itself could have been the consumer version of Windows. There's nothing really, you know, it's not hard to grasp. It's, you know, the interface is almost identical to Windows 98. There aren't even any missing features, really. You know, it had desktop theme support, it had games as an optional feature, so there was nothing really there was nothing spectacular consumer-wise that was missing. I think 2000 itself could have been, you know, pushed to consumers. I don't see why not. But obviously, rather than me just going on being really critical of Microsoft, because obviously I don't know all the reasons, but XP was only a year after 2000 anyway, so, you know, it's not like we had to wait 10 years and then they merged the lines, so they were thinking about doing it anyway, so there you go. Okay, next question comes from Flagers or Flaggers Personal, sorry, I don't know which way to pronounce that, who says, if I gave you a MacBook Pro with Windows 10 running using Boot Camp, would you trash it or would you use Windows on it? And to be honest, my simple answer is I would do neither. I'd stick it on eBay and make some money out of it. I certainly wouldn't use it. You wouldn't catch me dead using a Mac. You'd have to pay me to use a Mac. So yeah, I'll just get a bit of extra cash. And next question comes from Plant, who says, will you ever do a video of installing XP on a PC from the last millennium? Now, an aim I've always had with my channel is to try and do videos that are not unique necessarily, but are, you know, they have an extra level of something which makes them different to most of the similar videos available on YouTube. So by that I mean not doing videos on things if there are already similar videos available on YouTube. So videos like the one that you write about can be found all over YouTube. You know, things about putting XP on this old machine, putting Windows 10 on a Pentium 3 are all over YouTube. Really, some of them really good videos as well. But that just makes it feel like, what's the point of me doing one? You know, if you can get that sort of stuff already, would it really make much more difference if I did it? Now with the videos that I do, which are mainly exploring the builds, what I do is I always make sure I research the build as much as possible beforehand, and obviously I record narration over the top every time. What I found is that the majority of similar videos on YouTube tend to be either people will type the narration, they won't have any narration and it'll just be a video of them clicking around, and or they'll have really annoying and pointless music like rock music blasting over the top, which really annoys me. So quite deliberately I tried to bring something different to that area and make sure that I do have, I like to think, hopefully, tell me if you disagree, you know, good and well-informed narration every time, consistently. So that's what I aim to do. And our next question comes from Luke Watson, who says, what's your favourite operating system before XP? Now, easy question this. Before I used XP, I had experience of using Windows 3.1, 95 and 98. 98 was always my favourite, hands down, as it was what was installed on my own computer at home. So it was simply the one I'd used the most, therefore learnt the most about, and obviously broke the most, but that's a story for another time. And so I found it the easiest and most enjoyable to use, basically, so 98, definitely. Our next question comes from Microsoft Betas, who asks, as Windows 10 is the last operating system, what do you think it will be like in 5 to 10 years' time? What features do you hope they bring back or implement in future updates? So Windows 10 in 5 to 10 years' time will probably more or less be like Windows Longhorn before it was reset. Well, no, come on, let's be serious. So what I want is I want quite a few removed features to return, such as visual styles from previous Windows versions. So I'd like the option to have Windows 7 Aero exactly as it appears in Windows 7, not like a third-party visual style remake, which are never quite the same. I want the actual theme from Microsoft. Same with the XP themes, but I really don't think Microsoft will look back. They don't seem to be looking back at all. I don't think that's a priority for them. So what will actually probably happen, and I'll put my money on this, is they'll keep pushing UWP apps. They'll continue replacing Win32 apps with UWP equivalents, with the intention that eventually Win32 apps will not be supported at some point in the distant future. However, Windows has always been excellent for backward compatibility, so I don't see a complete phase out or lack of support for Win32 apps happening for a very, very long time, but I think that is eventually what they'll be aiming for. Our next question comes from James Jager, who says, do you think it would have been a positive outcome if Neptune and Odyssey weren't merged together to make XP? Really good question. Well, really, since hardly anything is known about Odyssey, that's a hard one to answer, even though it is a really good question, like I said. However, based on what you can see, if you look at Neptune build 5111, which is the only leaked build of Neptune at the moment, there are lots of promising features, many of which did make it into XP. So the integrated firewall, the welcome screen, and all those sort of things. Fast boot up even, which came in Windows 98, like, you know, that's like 10 years later. More than that. It's incredible. So I do like to think, based on, you know, what was going on there early on, that I think it would have been just as good as XP, especially on the consumer front with Neptune. However, if this did happen, it begs the question if both Neptune and Odyssey would have had different final names or not, as they were ultimately developed separately. So maybe Neptune would have become Windows XP, and Odyssey would have been Windows 2001, maybe. Who knows? But in terms of simplicity, I'm glad they did merge the consumer and business lines with XP because it's a lot cleaner. It eliminates a lot of needless stuff, like having to come up with twice the number of names, for example, which is, unnecessary. Keep it simple, merge them, brilliant. Windows XP Home, Windows XP Pro, sorted. And our last question comes from Victor Oh God. Well, I was just sitting down at my PC, reading all the comments on my videos, and then I saw Victor Tran, and I thought, OMG, he's got 2 wide eyes, and a smiley mouth, oh what will I do? I think I'd better run away before he kills me. Sorry about that, guys. Don't know where that came from. So anyway, that's it for this episode of Windows on Windows Q&A. Please leave your questions for the next episode in the comments below, and I look forward to pushing out that episode for you in the near future. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.